Talk to us about how worrying is it for you that we're seeing the disparities becoming worse at this point in time as we go through the coronavirus devastation?
Well, it's clearly just a top of my worry list, top of a concern list. But I entered this discussion and this debate during the coronavirus, at the start of the coronavirus, optimistic, interestingly enough. Optimistic about maybe coming out of this disruption time in a better position than we entered. And that meaning that people, companies in particular, paid attention to what we now call these essential workers. We start to understand what an essential worker really is, the guy who delivers food for us, the guys who stock the shelves, the guys who push the patients around, et cetera. I'm hoping that, knowing that a lot of the Black and brown people in the United States work at the lower end of the socioeconomic employment ladder, I'm hoping that we can use this time, total disruption, pandemic, racial unrest, continued socioeconomic imbalance, to reset the whole conversation about how Black and brown people are fit into the employment ladder, but also how companies view these quote unquote essential workers and how important they are, how we have to pay them, how we have to nurture them, and we have to move them up the ladders.
We've seen.
I'm hoping it's an opportunity, but I don't know if it will be.
I'm glad you're optimistic. I hope that we can come out of the conversation still optimistic. How optimistic are you about some of the statements that are being made by corporations? I'm interested in particular because do you think they feel authentic across the board as it stands?
I think that many companies, many more than I've ever seen before. So the vast majority that are speaking now, many more than I've seen before, are starting to feel uneasy about the state of America in this space. They are starting to realize that this is fundamentally unsustainable. It's definitely unfair and wrong, and that the tilt is starting to come off. We're starting to go out of balance, and it's really important that the rhetoric in the administration, which is generally negative and definitely demeaning, that has to be offset by some action, real action, funding groups, changing employment practices, being affirmative in how they actually address their employment needs, being affirmative in hiring Black and brown people, being affirmative in progressing them through the companies, being affirmative about how they look at the C-suite and how they look at the board level. Without that passion and that drive, I think that we're going to not make progress. And I think the companies are now starting to realize more and more that not making progress is not sustainable. So they're going to have to do something. And the good news is it's kind of like it all came together at once. This is not enough to make change, but at least if we get enough crescendo of voices, maybe we can keep the action going. This is not the first time that a Black man has been killed by a policeman. It's not the first time. It happened before. It happened before that. And I'm hoping this time we just don't let this sacrifice of this human go unrequited, unpaid back, right? It's important that companies start to stand up and say, we have something to do with this. We have something to do with the solutions.
So, Ursula, though, I mean, you mentioned, you sort of allude to the fact that we've been here before in this country with the killing of a Black person at the hands of police. What makes this seem different to you that the outcome of this is going to be different and more positive than maybe what it was in the past?
Because I think that the number of the broad-based coalition that's now starting to speak, please don't get my little optimism as overjoyed optimism. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I do not believe that what I'm hearing today is going to actually drive change. We're going to have to be involved and stay involved. All of the voices in the street, all of the voices in the news media, all of the voices in corporate America are going to have to stay involved to actually see true change. The only reason why I'm a little bit more optimistic is that people are getting fed up with the current state of play. I just don't think the people can any longer sit back and say, yeah, we're going to go back to the way it was. The way it was blown up in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Was blown up in the pandemic. So we have the ability to build a new way. And I'm hoping that we take this opportunity to start thinking about that. We can't fix everything coming out of this pandemic, right? We're not going to fix inequality in America, but we actually have seen it very clearly in front of our eyes now. And we've also seen the impact of disregarding that inequality, right? If these people just went away. And I'm hoping that we're smart enough to understand that we have to change this rhetoric. We have to change what we do to get a better outcome. The administration is also one of the things that is a kind of in some crazy ways, a hidden asset. The rhetoric out of the administration is so negative, is so kind of out of tune with a lot of Americans that is causing them to actually sit up and listen and say, whoa, that's not the way we want to actually think about our future and our world. That's not the way that we want to be engaged in society. And hopefully hopefully what's happening is that people are starting to get unsettled with the status quo and starting to engage and start to know that they're responsible. It's not only government that can do this. It's not only businesses that can do this. All of us have to work together to absolutely try to change the dynamic in the world. The fact that more Black and brown people are unemployed is not surprising at all. The fact that more Black and brown people are killed by police is not surprising at all. So we don't have to be reminded by that, about that. What we have to do is change it. And that's so I'm hoping that business now starts to lead the way. Businesses with localities, with cities and governors, cities and states can actually engage, because I'm not sure we can get the play that we need to get out of the federal level, but I know that cities and states are interested in having a better life for their citizens. And so I'm hoping that we can get this kind of articulation and debate and the discourse that you need to come to a better solution. Now, I'm all the way in England, and I'm engaged. And and I know that a lot of other CEOs are engaged as well. And if we don't lose that energy, I think we can get some positive play out of this.
There is a lot of energy, Ursula. I'm wondering, do you worry at all that you don't have a government, a U.S. government at least, that isn't working in concert with some of those CEOs to make these improvements, and to a certain extent, and I'll just say this very bluntly, may actually be working against it? When you go back to previous crises that we've had, even under Republican administrations, you go under Nixon, Bush, Reagan, you had a government that at least fundamentally was pushing for some of the same changes that we heard from the public, that we heard from businesses. It doesn't appear we have that right now.
It terrifies me. It terrifies me. I was speaking to a group of CEOs earlier today, and I was speaking to a marketing structure today, and I almost came to tears about this. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And I can't tell you that I'm happy with the way it is. We clearly have, it's almost like a cancer that we're fighting against ourselves. There's something in our body that's fighting against ourselves. We seem to be in this state where fundamentally the U.S. administration is not in harmony, more than not in harmony. They are totally counter-purpose to progress in this area. I kind of understand where the president is coming from, not understand, but he's been there forever. I'm actually very honestly a little surprised with the rest of the Republican administration and how they're letting it happen, kind of letting the fabric be torn apart. And this nation has been around for 270, 80, 90 years. I'm not even sure, I lost count. And we are better than this. We are better than this. We cannot exist in a country where half the people, 60% of the people, don't participate. Don't participate at a good level. It just doesn't work. We're not a dictatorship. We're not we're not communism. We're not, a robber baron nation. We are America. And the whole point of this country is that we work together. By the way, it's a meritocracy. You got to kind of make your way up, but you can't have it blocked at birth. You can't have it blocked at birth, and that's what's happening now. It's blocked at birth, and then we are being brutalized in the streets by the very people who are supposed to be protecting us and serving us. Not all of them, but enough that makes it very difficult for me to send my daughter and son out. I send them out with a normal African-American refrain. Be careful, guys. If you run into a police person, make sure that you do what they say, whatever it is. That's the nation we live in. We have to be aware of that. That's where companies have to actually start to speak up. They have to say that that's not the kind of policing that we want. There are a lot of people who do it well, a lot of police people who do it well. Follow those guys. Governors have to speak up. Chiefs have to speak up and say that what we want is a real nation here. The nation that, the more perfect union that we all know about, that's what we want. It's not impossible. we were getting closer, and we seem to be sliding way back in just a couple of years.
But Ursula, we also want a nation that has more than just 4 black CEOs running Fortune 500 companies. If you can't see it, you can't be it. How are you working in the boards that you're on? Because interestingly, you're on ExxonMobil, I believe's board, and they're actually notably one of the companies that hasn't yet put out a statement of some sort. Is that because they're worried about authenticity? How much can you help drive change on the boards that you sit? And can we see more executives in positions of leadership that look like you?
One of the great things about being who I am, meaning being a black woman, is that when somebody wants me to be on their board and they speak to me about it, they know what they get, right? They know that they get a black woman. I'm a good board member. I know how to govern, but they know my point of view on all the boards that I'm on, all of the organizations, for-profit and not-for-profit. I am a voice, along with others on the board, for diversity and inclusion, true big D and big I, on all the boards that I'm on. We have to actually tackle this problem aggressively. Think about this. There are four African-American CEOs in the Fortune 500. We can do better than this. And it has to start at the board. You're not going to diversify the company, particularly not the C-suite, if you don't diversify the board. I think that goes hand in hand. I'm a product of a diversified board, of a diverse board. At Xerox, Ken Chenault, I was on the board of American Express. Vernon Jordan literally was instrumental in both my success and Ken Chenault's success. We know how this works. We know it's not easy, and it's going to take I'll say it again, affirmative action, not affirmative action, the old policy, governmental program, affirmative action by companies. Companies are going to have to put it in their mind that they want to do it. We're going to have to get black and brown directors on the board, and they're going to have to continue to help drive the companies to be more diverse. Just like we're trying to do with women, right? Just like we're trying to do with gays and lesbians. With diversity in presence, we know has an impact, and we have to continue to push for that. Part of my job, part of my role on the boards that I'm on, all of them, and the ones that I've been on, is to make sure this doesn't go silent. Yeah. And by the way, one of the great signals, if it does go silent, then I won't be on the board for long.
Ursula, so we have seen a lot more companies with these diversity and inclusion initiatives. A lot of companies have actually made some of the data from these initiatives public. We have seen an increase in hiring, but one thing that we have seen in that data as well is that some of the companies have had trouble retaining some of these hires, whether we're talking about blacks, women, Hispanics. The idea that they can get these people in the door, but the environment that those people walk into isn't necessarily nurturing enough, I guess, to keep them there. How do you address that?
And that's where the inclusion part of diversity and inclusion comes in. First of all, help from the outside is something that companies should look for. If you don't know how to do it, it's going to be hard to start doing it, right? So there are organizations that can help companies understand not just the onboarding, getting them and bringing them in the door, but how do you actually create an inclusive environment? That's why it went from diversity to diversity and inclusion, because of the statistics that you just point out, that we get them there, but they don't belong. They don't stay? Why don't they stay? Because they don't feel like they belong. The place is still, I say this a lot, companies were made by white men. So when you walk in the building, you see desks, you see, Johns, you see all of the stuff that you see, but what you feel is a male environment. We have to change, and definitely a white male environment. Inclusion is about rounding some of those edges and making it more possible for people to be who they are in the companies versus having to become like everybody else in the company, which is generally white men. That's why inclusion becomes as big a word, big D and big I. And I will say it to every company. If you're trying to do it alone, if you're trying to do it with no help, I almost assure you, you'll fail. It's kind of like trying to learn French with no French teachers. If you have no idea about inclusion and how it works, you have no idea about diversity and how it works, you should get some experts in to help you. There are companies that can help you. There are organizations that can help you. There are individuals that can help you. So pay attention here. And I think we for a long time, we said, yeah, we got them in. This is good. And now what we're seeing, it started with women. They're leaving after a while. Yeah. They're leaving because they don't really belong. They just entered, but they were never made to feel at home in the company. And that's where inclusion comes in. And help is out there.